Now, in this video, we'll be discussing how science gets all the credit instead of God. Now, don't get me wrong, folks, I'm not anti-science. I'm just going to show you the inconsistency and the arrogance of the atheists who want to give science all the credit for coming up with information to explain certain things and then ignoring God who actually created certain things. Now, as you know, we believe as theists that God created all of the things in the universe, all the complex elements such as the single cells, our bodies, animals, just like that peacock in the screen. He's created all of these things, and in the scientific, or let's say the atheistic worldview, you'll see that how they basically deny God and give all the credit to science. For example, that peacock just looks amazing in its creation. It's like it's just come out of a fashion studio. It's like Gucci designed all of those eyes on its wings and so forth. It just looks amazing in its design, right? An atheist will say, oh, that was just a product of brainless Mother Nature over millions of years. It simply just came about by randomness and so forth. But then, none of that obviously can be proven. But then, you look at your single cells, for example, how complicated and complex those elements are. How your proteins move from one end to another. Your cells have security guards. They let certain vitamins in and they don't allow certain vitamins out and so forth. It's a whole machinery working going on within your bodies, which is amazing. I could put a hyperlink below this video and you can see for yourself how complex and complicated these machineries are. And, atheists like to, in the atheist worldview, they like to discredit God. They like to, in fact, credit science more. And, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-science. In fact, the atheist worldview want to make this condescending view that, religion is against science, and that both are an oxymoron. You can only believe in one or the two. But that is nonsensical. You see, we believe God is the creator, and all science is it explains what God has created, right? So, when you show an atheist a beautiful bird like a peacock, for example, and show how it's all designed and so forth, they simply would, deny that it had an engineer. It came from this brainless Mother Nature, which they can't prove, right? And they basically would say, if you read some of their comment sections and let's say science goes on and explains how the peacock got its beautiful feathers and so forth, or, when you get scientists explaining how cells work, how marvelous it is, how, DNA is transferred, how RNA is transferred and it's made and so forth. When you go into all that complex design elements, they actually thank science. They say science is just wonderful, right? But they shun God to the side and say nothing about God. They just say, it's just imaginary. It's not there. They literally shift the credit. And I say to myself, it's just clearly absurd. From a rational perspective, if I picked up something that no scientist has saw, let's say I created something actually. Let's say I created a machine that no scientist has ever saw, and I secretly know how this thing works, how it operates, because I created it. I have the manual. I have a secret manual that no one has ever seen. I know exactly how this machine operates. Now, if I gave this machine to a scientist and said, look, I'm giving you 2 weeks to study this machine and let's see what you can come up with. Let's see how much you know about this machine and what its capabilities are. Now, 2 weeks later, if this scientist came back and said, this is the whole thesis, I've written it all up, this is a manual, basically what I know about this machine so far in the 2 weeks I spent with it, here are some of its functions and so forth. Now, you as a person looking at this would say, wow, how wonderful this scientist. He's a very smart man. Without a manual, he got to operate the machine. He found out a lot of things that he found out on his own. You'd say, you know, what a wonderful scientist he is, yeah? You'd say science is wonderful. But wouldn't you give me any credit for creating such a machinery that can jump, talk, walk, it can think for itself, and so forth? You'd give me credit for that as well, wouldn't you? As the creator, as the designer. Now, wouldn't you? Of course you would. So why is it that when it comes to the creation, we say suddenly, oh, look how wonderful science is. Science is just so wonderful, it can explain these things. But then we don't give God credit for actually creating those things. So that's the difference between the two worldviews. And this is why God created hellfire, because he has shown the obvious truth, which the atheists clearly deny. And it's really embarrassing, actually. It's embarrassing that they shun God aside when they see a beautiful peacock or a beautiful creature flying, for example, and they say, oh no, that was just brainless Mother Nature, you know, it just happened by chance, which they can't even prove. They glorify science and they shun God aside. It's really denial and just embarrassing, and it's just nonsensical. Anyway, thank you for listening. Goodbye.